one of the co-hosts, Candace Moppins, and we have a new co-host, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Good morning. My name is Madeline Callanan. I'm a board member of East Side Parkways Coalition, and I'm a fourth grade teacher in Buffalo. I got involved because my students got involved, and they kept asking me for updates, so I started going to the meetings, and now here I am.
And so we have today one of our illustrious supporters, but also our resident historian, Mr. Terry Anderson. So we're going to talk about today what it was like before the cavernous 33. To have a discussion on what that did for community members, what it looked like, the possibilities, but most of all, the health of the community. So, Terry, can you take it away?
Having been there at the time that the Humboldt Parkway was still Humboldt Parkway, and before your folks were around, but they were around too at that time. So I'm thinking more or less early 60s, because from 1960 to 1970, what they called the hourglass, that last portion that remained of Humboldt Parkway was still a parkway. And it was a parkway all the way through from the Science Museum, Buffalo Museum of Science at Northampton Street, to Agassiz Circle. But they had started in mid-50s. They had started to remove parts of the parkway from what was Agassiz Circle underneath Main Street and connecting it to what was the 198 Scajaquada Expressway. So at that time, though, it was still Parkway, which is, in those days, families often lived in the same neighborhoods. So we would walk down Humboldt Parkway to my grandparents' house, which was on Florida Street, and I was baptized at and went to school at St. Francis de Sales, which was at Northland in Humboldt back in the day. So it was not only a parkway in the sense of a route to and from, it was our playground. It was, for me, back in those days, it was, whether we call it, it was everything, you know. So it was the Wild West. It was the deepest, darkest jungle. It was Sherwood Forest. It was where I could be Daryl LaMonica at the time. Yeah, that's before you all's time. But, you know, with it being Super Bowl weekend, I still have a lot of very sincere feelings about that very first Super Bowl, because Buffalo should have been in the first Super Bowl. If we had beat Kansas City, the Kansas City Chiefs, and you're talking Lynn Dawson versus Bart Starr for the Green Bay Packers. This is Hall of Famers. And we had our own Hall of Fame people, including actually Jack Kemp, who went on to be congressman. But back in the day, I was either Butch Bird, Albert Dubinion, Cookie Gilchrist. There was a whole raft of AFC champion caliber people, and they played at what you call the Rock Pile, but was War Memorial Stadium back then. I'm getting back, man, you're right. All this stuff just rolls out from time to time, what I do remember. And so that was a neighborhood thing. That was my neighborhood. I was a Cold Spring kid. And so the Rock Pile, War Memorial Stadium, was at the edge of Cold Spring and, back then, the Fruit Belt, and which went into, went further down Jefferson, and you went to downtown. But I'll share some of that later. But the pain of missing the very first Super Bowl, which they say was, I guess we're at Super Bowl 60. Somehow I remember that. Somebody must have told
Somebody
me
Google
about
it.
Yeah, we're at
the
Super
one.
Bowl 60. But the very first one we should have been in this one too. But I'm going to leave that alone. We'll be back there next
we
year
should-
and
we
win
should
That's a
that.
whole nother show.
We should have been.
Yeah, we absolutely. But
Interception.
it's a pain that we've all learned to live with and endure over the decades. And one of the things that we have had to endure was that concrete canyon, that cancer alley that they put in when they removed the parkway and put that last piece of the 33 in, the expressway to downtown, the road to nowhere, that ended up draining all of the resources from the arterials and Jefferson Avenue and Fillmore Avenue and Broadway.
So if we can go back, because you brought up a really good point about the disinvestment of our economic corridors. If you can go back, I want you to paint the picture of what those commercial streets and districts look like when you were a child. Can you?
Oh my gosh,
Share
it
that with us
was a whole
and our
different
listeners.
world. It was so vibrant. At that time, it was a community in transition. So we're talking German American, the Jewish American, the African American, all those folks in the same area, Polish American, Italian American. My granddad, like I say, used to walk down Humboldt Parkway going to the Broadway market. So what it did was everything was connected. The Pine Grill was at Jefferson and Ferry. So folks could be in an Italian or Polish or Irish or German American community largely, but they flowed through each other community. So the Zanzibar on Fillmore Avenue and the Revelot, which was a jazz spot on Jefferson, folks could go and, sort of freely and comfortably be in one set of circumstances and move into another set of circumstances, and everyone benefited together. So you could live with the people you wanted to, where you wanted to, with the family members you wanted to, and still take in all the rest of Buffalo because it was the best designed city in the world. So it flowed. I mean, it just flowed to different neighborhoods, different people. It was vibrant, and there's a one-to-one correlation between putting in that and I listen, folks say that it was divided the African American community. That's not exactly true. I look at it as ethnic cleansing. They moved out the folks that were there, and to some extent, the overflow. Like my parents came. My mother was a World War II veteran. She went to Europe on the Queen Mary. And she used to emphasize that we were seventh-generation Americans. So we were part of that flow. But people coming up from the South, people moving across from Chicago, Cleveland to New York, the cross flow that in Buffalo, the Central Terminal was the central place. It was a magnificent city, and it looked like a forest from the air. But there was all kinds of stuff going on the ground, and it wasn't necessarily, I mean, there were different divides. For instance, the A La Turks were a gang. The Pythons. This was a time when West Side Story talks about the Sharks and the Jets. It was a very there was neighborhoods, there was a sense of place, but what cut across that, getting into the Super Bowl, was sports. So that if you were a member of this gang or that gang or the other gang, you kind of put that aside in order to play basketball or football. So it was a unifying force, and that was the thing that Buffalo was in the 60s, and going to the rock pile, everybody went. It was full house, everybody there. That's just one example, but it was, John Young invented Wings and Things at the time, and there was Henry, from what I recall. There were some blank spots in there, too.
Terry, I was just listening to a podcast about play and the importance of children having time for unstructured play that isn't always, not only being supervised by adults, but always being dictated by adults. This is what you're going to play. This is how you're going to play it. And one of the things they were talking about was a great podcast, Hidden Brain. I recommend it. But one of the things they were talking about is the difference between playing on a little league baseball versus playing pickup. Because when you're playing pickup, you have to figure out, okay, we don't have enough people for each team, so we're going to have ghost runners. Oh, and if you hit it towards those windows, you're automatically out because we can't get in trouble with that family. And the development that children get through that unstructured play is really important. And so hearing you talk about this, I'm just thinking it sounds like when you were young, there was that opportunity to meet up with neighborhood kids. You had the space to do it. Whereas now, kids who are living on the highway, how can they walk across the street to their neighbor? They literally cannot. So was that your experience as a child?
Again, like I said, it wasn't clean and folks, it depends on your family structure. Some folks, the kids were let out, but you better not be out of sight, or you better not cross that street or something to that effect. But at the same time, like I say, you might be in a neighborhood that was one gang next door, just across the street. And so to have enough people for your team, it broke those things up so that you were playing. The basic rule when I was a kid was that you better be home when the street lights come on, whatever that was. So whether you were permitted to go across the street, down the block, ride your bike, and those sort of things, and be at play across boundaries and play with kids of different ethnicities and different religions and different family structures was possible because you were out, but you were in the neighborhood. So there were neighborhoods, and you knew what your boundaries were. But within that neighborhood, you have to figure when you could walk up half a block and be in a park-like setting, be in a parkway, be able to have a pickup, like you're saying, a pickup team. So your team, you might have your basic cousins and their friends and their friends of their friends, and it would be divided, and there would be maybe rivalries between this block and that block, or this group of cousins and that group of cousins, and that's where, and tell you the truth, when you're a kid, some of the fastest people, some of the quickest, some of the most adept athletically were the girls. So you didn't have, yeah, man, she's on my team.
Better watch out.
What I mean? Because she's the best,
right?
Receiver, or the quarterback. So it was kind of a catch as catch can and an ad hoc, open, area. And without that, it's absolutely, there is no sense of place. There is no neighborhood. People talk about these kids coming up and they're acting like this and acting like that. Well, you had to act. You acted accordingly. I'm from Cold Spring. I'm from Humboldt Parkway. Or whatever. There was a certain expectation of behavior.
Right. Whereas now, you have kids who don't even have the opportunity to have the space to have that development that comes through everything you're talking about, learning to get along with people that isn't who you normally spend time with, learning how to problem solve. If someone's giving you a problem, you don't always need to go to the adult and have that problem solved for you. And this is a thing that's happening nationally, but I'm just thinking about in the Humboldt area, there isn't even the space for parents to make that decision for their kids to have that time, which is really important for development.
So my family grew up along Humboldt Parkway too, and my grandmother used to tell the story share the story about people actually coming out of their homes along Humboldt Parkway and having a Sunday dinner right on walking across the street to the median. I'm calling it median, but the Parkway, and sharing meals with other people that lived along Humboldt Parkway as well.
Right.
And I wish that some of those pictures that she had, you could see. They're all black now, I guess, with the filament and whatever. But how impactful that was. She always talks about the trees and how tall the trees were, and all the different kinds of birds, and how it was just a beautiful place to live and grow. And she was originally from Florida, so she was accustomed to trees and greenery. Right. And how they came here for the opportunity of better jobs, first relocating to Lackawanna and then from Lackawanna coming to Buffalo. And so what I wanted to know what your insight would be with regards to just the current conditions of the space now, and the prospects of what could be.
Well, it's beautiful to see the different folks that have been involved in this struggle, and it's kind of developed in a very, organic sort of way. And we're talking about, for me at least, I look at it as the one road. And I look at that one road that would be the Skajackwada to the restored Frederick Law Olmsted Parkway to the link that continued. I would like to see the Fruit Belt, the restoration of that street grid again. That whole neighborhood, the Fruit Belt, the Cold Spring, the Parkside communities along that one road, but all of us together making that happen, which is what is happening right now, just like in this gathering here. Brilliant people, just really a gathering of talented different folks working together to have the Buffalo like I grew up in.
Professor Terrence, with 2 E's, Robinson, you were talking about, you're much, much, much older than I am. You were talking about the
if you could see his face.
1950s and 60s. But I'd like to ask you a question about Frederick Law Olmsted in the 1860s and 70s when you were young, and what his impetus was, what he wanted to do by designing the parkways.
Well, he's the same guy that did Central Park. He's the same guy that did Stanford. He's the same guy that did Yosemite. What he saw was, and he spent years traveling the South first, and was a brilliant man. But what he saw was it was the great equalizer. People could be rich. People could be poor. These were the places that gave people respite from the urban environment, 2 and 3 families in a house and walk-ups and but everyone could go to the park and share and enjoy together, and that's the missing link. We have the one example of his design. Park approaches, all of those things combined together, what we could call the Olmsted Crescent, where you go from Kleinhans to AKG to the History Museum to the Art Museum and everything along the way, the Canisius College, you have a opportunity here to restore and improve. So maybe there wouldn't be equestrian pathways, but there would be a dedicated pathway for those silent but deadly scooters and
e-bikes.
E-bikes.
E-bikes. And that was before your time, Steve.
I call them people movers.
Yeah, but so we adapt, we learn, we use green infrastructure this is a perfect example. The catastrophe that's happened along Hurdle in that area, the combined sewer overflow, the ancient infrastructure. This is the time when we should have the infrastructure and the terminus, the western terminus of high-speed rail, just like it used to be the western terminus of the Erie Canal. 5 years. We get it done in 5 years. We do the right thing, do it the right way with the right people, and I can have my city back again. That's how I really. You want to know how I really
You will
feel
know
about
how
it?
you really feel.
I can't really say on here.
Miss Candace, is there an opportunity for people from the community to share what they would like to see happen with the Parkway?
Yes. So on Wednesday, February the 18th, we're having a town hall meeting at the Frank Merriweather Library. It is going to be an opportunity for community members to come and share how you feel about the current project, what it is that you'd like to see in your community. You will be given an opportunity to speak.
Oh. Wow. Instead of just
We will
listening?
have food. And in this process, we recognize that people from this community, their voices have not been heard.
Mm-hmm.
And what it is that they want have not been heard. And so while the Eastside Parkway Coalition, we are a group of members of residents who live in the city of Buffalo, some folks who are impacted directly by it, some whose parents and family members are affected by it, and some who generally just care about wanting something better for people in that neighborhood. So we're asking you to take some time out Wednesday, February the 18th, and head over to the Merriweather Library from 5 to 7:30. The doors open at 4:45, so if you want a good seat.
Yeah.
There'll be a slide presentation, but we're asking, inviting you to come.
And this is different than the listening sessions that have been hosted previously by the Department of Transportation. This is hosted by Eastside Parkways Coalition.
Yes.
And what led to the decision to have a town hall versus, the listening sessions that have been going on?
Well, we've always had town hall type meetings where residents have an opportunity to speak, even if they don't agree with what we would like to see happen for the project. I think that we can always find some way to have a happy medium or come to some consensus. And I think that the consensus is prioritizing the health of the community. We can paint a brush and make the people disappear on paper. But if you drive through there any day, you see people, you see families, and you see children. What you don't see are the forefathers that lived there who are now dead from rare disease, from asthma, from lung issues. And their stories have gone with them. They've died and the stories have gone with them. It is our job to make sure that this project going forward, that people are heard, that those stories are shared, and that we collectively get behind prioritizing the health of the community.
Well said. Do you have any last thoughts, Mr. Terry?
Oh, a few, but we're almost out of time. But my picture of health is the economic health, the social health, the cultural health. I mean, at what used to be Temple Beth David, which is now Faith Missionary Baptist Church, Martin Luther King Jr. spoke at the time of Selma.
That's on Humboldt Parkway, right across from St. Francis de Sales.
There you go.
Okay.
And that's where they want to dig and put in something to deal with the combined sewer overflow, but they're not talking about the green infrastructure and the way that relates to the rest of the flow there. All of that, 11 acres should be planted. The children that are going to the schools in the area ought to be the ones that are planting those gardens and learning about biodiversity and they're the next wave, So we want to have a full community, like you said, the town hall. God bless Betty Jean Grant and the energy that she and Sherry brought to the last one, which was a full-throated discussion. Even though I'll give DOT its due, my understanding is that at the last listening session, many of the suburban dwellers agree. The folks with a wider Western New York Environmental Alliance and that sort of thing, they agree. Everyone, we are in this together. We need to work with the regional ring suburbs to produce the best thing that they can do and to have our transportation network be looked at in a regional way. And we'll share this, I'll share with you next week.
All right. So I wanted to give Maddie the last few minutes to talk about the project that her fourth grade students worked on, and how that impacted and brought her actually to Eastside Parkways Coalition.
Sure. So last year, my students and I started a project called the Stand Up Project. And it was inspired by Jen Confried of Rochester. And we learned about different people in the community who stand up for our community and how they do that. And the group that just captured the hearts of my kids was Eastside Parkways. So I gave a little preview lesson to my students and said, hey, you know, there was this parkway. It was ripped up. It's a highway. Now we get to decide what happens next. Just the ABCs of it. That was must have been Friday. Monday, Eastside Parkways comes in, gives their presentation. My students said, hey, can we give them our presentation? And I'm like, what?
Awesome.
They had prepared slides. They got up and presented to Eastside Parkways. And so sure enough, every week after that, they're asking me, hey, what's going on? What's going on with the lawsuit? What's the update? And I was like, I don't know. So I start going to the meetings. And then it just goes on from there. Those students actually in November, they presented at a teacher conference. Everyone else was teachers presenting, and then my kids. And they presented on Humboldt Parkway. They blew it out of the water. They had no notes. They just spoke from the heart and spoke. They know so much about it. And I'm really excited that group of students is coming in on Monday to my current class to introduce the Stand Up Project. So they're going to share what they learned, what they did in order to stand up for Humboldt Parkway. And, you know, they all got the yard signs and all of that. So I'm really excited. We're entering kind of season 2 of the Stand Up Project with the new cast, my new class. So I'm excited for updates on that.
And the idea is if we all collectively make sure that the right thing is done with bringing back green space, with bringing back the parkway systems, that those kids, your kids, will be talking to their great-grandchildren about what we did right here as opposed to not right.
Exactly. And the beautiful thing is, you know, in the last minute, I have a mix of students, some who live on Humboldt Parkway, right around Humboldt Parkway, some who live around Bidwell Parkway. And so they were able to just have that empathy for one another and say, oh, wow, we have really different experiences. But we all have the same rights. We all should have the same rights as children to play on a parkway and to be a child and to breathe clean air. And they understood that before I even explained it to them.
I love that. Civil engagement. And it's so important. We need little activists. All right, signing off. This has been the Eastside Parkways Coalition, our hour, and we'll see you next week. Bye now.